Hey guys, I forgot to start recording when I set this up for the discussion, so you're going to hear students talking in the background. Um, the story we're going to read is all about memory and how technology might soon kind of replace the way that we remember things now. And I mean, that worked with Google. Like in my lifetime, technology has completely changed the way that I have to remember and the things that I have to remember. So your discussion questions, and if home, you're going to write the answers to this rather than discuss them. Number one, what is your earliest memory? What do you remember about it? As much detail as you can. Number two, are there things about the moment in time that you are remembering that you're sure you do not remember? Like maybe you remember what happened, but you don't remember what you were wearing or how your hair looked or whatever. Number three, how much do you trust that memory? How much do you think that your memory corresponds with the actual facts of that moment in time? Number four, at what point in your life can you start trusting your memory? So are you going to say that, like, you know, from the time I was 13 on up, so the past 2 years, I'm pretty good on those. I can remember those really well. Or do you say, like, I can't even remember what I ate for lunch yesterday? Like, I can't trust my memory at all. Which do you think? And then the last one is the most important question. What kind of complications does this create for your life? So what are the implications of how much you can trust your memory for how you live your life? How do you make decisions if you're not fully able to trust everything in your memory? All right, so you're going to write down your responses to those questions in a Google Doc for participation points. So I don't know about you, but I can't trust my earliest memories. I think that I remember certain events in the past. When my family was really young, we lived in American Samoa. And I remember certain things about American Samoa that I don't think I would have picked up from like watching movies about it or something, because I've never seen a movie set in American Samoa. So I'm remembering like swimming out in the ocean, like around this certain point in the rock. And like, that's really clear in my head. But the other complication is that when we moved there, my grandparents gave us a video camera. It was one of really, really early video camera that actually had like the VHS cassette in it. And so a lot of our experiences there were taped, and I've watched those tapes. I watched them a lot as a kid. So I don't know if what I am remembering is my actual memory or if I'm remembering something that I saw in one of those tapes. And then is it actually my memory if I'm remembering like almost through a third person lens, you know? I'm like remembering like what I looked like as I was talking to the camera. That wouldn't really be a part of my actual memory of the event, right? Has that been, I mean, you guys are like the generation that has been raised with like social media from when you were very, very like babies, right? And so there has been like people that had smartphones in their pockets all the time to take pictures and video of you. How much do you trust your memories from the past? Roger?
So like for me, like once it gets before like 5 years old,
Yeah.
I remember them, but like the chronological order gets all scrambled.
Oh,
like,
right.
I can't remember which one's first. And so I kind of went with my earliest memory, just like kind of like learning how to walk and stuff like that. I don't remember anything about it. I just kind of remember like stumbling, but like nothing specific. But like I was gonna say, wouldn't say trust them to like 8 years old. And like the earliest one I can vividly remember was when we moved from my old house in Saratoga Springs. That's like the only one like early that I can like.
And that was like when you were like 8?
When I was like 3, and then like everything else.
Okay, so it's like these chronological events. You're sort of like, I can't say like what I was doing the day before I first left and what I did the day after, but this one tiny little kind of feeling is foremost in your head. But then once you get to about 8, you can kind of start to remember chronological. That is supported by psychological, like neurological studies, which says that you really cannot form memories until you are about 2 years old. Some people a little bit earlier, some people a little bit later, but your brain is not capable of like long-term memory in the way that it is now. So that kind of jives, right? And then once you get a little bit older and your brain's more like functioning better, you can actually remember even how you were feeling in those moments and what was happening. Ash?
I trust my memory. I trust that like those events happened because other people have told me and like I kind of remember it, but I don't trust the details.
Yeah, so it's like you have to have corroborating evidence. of like your mom saying, yep, that is what happened. And because she's older, maybe she can remember it. That's kind of my experience too. I'm like, I think there was like an outcropping in the ocean of rock. And my mom's like, that's right, there was. And that's the only way I'm gonna remember that thing or trust that memory. Okay, I'm gonna move like this way. So Keegan, Peyton, Zach, Haley, Maggie, then we'll move on. Yeah.
I kind of trust my memory, but like when you're little, emotional, like you're really, really emotional. So that has a big impact on how you view the world. Like,
right.
My parents were watching Men in Black, and that movie was the scariest movie to me. But now that I see it, it's like
It's a comedy.
not at all. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
So like I don't trust it because I was emotional, but at the same time, like I know those things happen, but I just don't trust my like response.
Okay, that's fascinating. Now we're getting into kind of the title of this story. If you look down, the truth of fact, the truth of feeling. That memory might have been true to you because of how you felt in it, but you're not necessarily remembering it accurately because your feelings are creating this bias. Yeah, Peyton?
I feel like I've become like more untrusting because now that there's so much proof that it could have happened, if there's no proof that it could have happened, then I'm like, my parents have pictures of me when I was like a baby, and I'm like, I don't remember that. Well, I know it happened.
Right.
But then my memories, there's no pictures of that. I don't know if it really happened.
Oh, that's fascinating. It's like how our brains are kind of
Like,
changing,
what if
right?
it was just a dream? You never know.
You don't really know. And maybe it's, yeah, maybe it's a memory of a dream. And I definitely have those actually that feel so real, but like everyone assures me they are not real. And so like, because of the way technology has developed, it might have led you to mistrust your memory even more. Distrust. Yeah. Zach?
So when we're little, we really see things emotionally, like you mentioned. So my earliest like memories are emotions more than memories.
Uh-huh.
And the only like really early memory I have per se was almost stitched together through other evidence. I remember the emotions I felt, and I've seen things like pictures or other evidence, and I've kind of associated them with the emotion, kind of forged the memory. But
Right.
the question is, did I really have it in the first place?
Right. So it's almost like your memory has become almost corrupted by the idea that you're stitching it together. Yeah. Haley?
I trust my memory to a certain extent, but to a very high extent.
Yeah.
Like if I know for sure that it actually happened, then I'll be like, okay, that's a memory. But if I'm like, I don't know if that was a dream or not, then I'm like weary about it. Because like, for example, I would swear up and down that I got left at Walmart from my parents, and it's like that never happened. We never forgot you at Walmart. And then like, I get different viewpoints from my family members about this one time that I visited the state to visit college, and something happened, and all I remember is me like, because this is after I had a seizure, I was like looking straight, like they said it was almost as if I was looking straight through them, and I remember that like I literally was.
Interesting. And then the question is like, did your memory form about looking straight through them because at some point early on you heard that phrase, looking straight through them?
Yeah, and I remember laying on a couch and then like my parents looking really worried because I wasn't speaking or anything, and I was like 3 when
Yeah.
it happened.
Yeah. So I think it goes with what people have been saying about the emotions too. Maybe you were left in Walmart. Maybe it was just for 30 seconds though. And so nobody else remembers it because it was not a big deal, right? But you remember it because you were terrified. And so it becomes what like your emotions say it is. Okay, Maggie, and then we're gonna move on.
I was gonna add on to that. I think it really depends on the memory because the bigger the event, the more you remember about it. Like there's things that are, oh, that happened, like yeah. And then like let's meet like a bigger event that like happened later or that like I remember that I was in, then I'm like, oh, yeah, I sure remember all of that. I think emotions like the emotions really like really a big role because like if it could be like this small event, but if your emotions like through the roof, then you're gonna totally remember it. But,
You're
like,
more
if
likely,
it's, like
yeah.
just normal, then you're like, oh yeah, that did happen. I don't remember.
And it's kind of an irony of memory that the big events are the ones we're highly emotional about. And so because of our high emotions, we might be biased to see them in a way that was incorrect, right? And yet those are the things that we trust our memory most about because we were like, it was so important. Of course, I'm going to remember it. So I think that that's like really getting into what the story is about. We are going to read the first section. I'm going to read it out loud to you. So just follow along. I am sorry about like how awkward the pages are stapled together. It happens every time, but we'll make it through. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So when my daughter Nicole was an infant, I read an essay suggesting that it might no longer be necessary to teach children how to read or write, because speech recognition and synthesis would soon render those abilities superfluous. My wife and I were horrified by the idea, and we resolved that no matter how sophisticated technology became, our daughter's skills would always rest on the bedrock of traditional literacy. It turned out that we and the essayists were both half correct. Now that she's an adult, Nicole can read as well as I can, but there is a sense in which she has lost the ability to write. She doesn't dictate her messages and ask a virtual secretary to read back to her what she last said, the way that the essayist predicted. Nicole subvocalizes. Her retinal projector displays the world in her field of vision, and she makes revisions using a combination of gestures and eye movements. For all practical purposes, she can write, but take away the assistive software and give her nothing but a keyboard like the one I remain faithful to, and she'd have difficulty spelling out many of the words in this very sentence. Under those specific circumstances, English becomes a bit like a second language to her, one that she can speak fluently but can only barely write. It may sound like I'm disappointed in Nicole's intellectual achievements, but that's absolutely not the case. She's smart and dedicated to her job at an art museum, where when she can be earning more money elsewhere. And I've always been proud of her accomplishments. But there is still the past me that who would have been appalled to see his daughter lose her ability to spell. And I can't deny that I am continuous with him. It's been more 30 years since I read that essay. And in that period, our lives have undergone countless changes that I couldn't have predicted. The most catastrophic one was when Nicole's mother, Angela, declared that she deserved a more interesting life than the one we were giving her, and spent the next decade crisscrossing the globe. But the changes leading to Nicole's current form of literacy were more ordinary and gradual, a succession of software gadgets that not only promised, but in fact delivered utility and convenience. And I didn't object to any of them at the time of their introduction. So it hasn't been my habit to engage in doomsaying whenever a new product is announced. I've welcomed new technology as much as anyone. But when Whetstone released its new search tool, Remem, it raised concerns for me in a way none of its predecessors did. Millions of people, some my age, but most younger, have been keeping life logs for years, wearing personal cams that capture continuous video of their entire lives. People consult their life logs for a variety of reasons, everything from reliving favorite moments to tracking down the cause of allergic reactions, but only intermittently. No one wants to spend all their time formulating queries and sifting through the results. Life logs are the most complete photo album imaginable, but like most photo albums, they lie dormant except on special occasions. Now Whetstone aims to change all of that. They claim Remem's algorithms can search the haystack by the time you finish saying needle. Remem monitors your conversation for references to past events, and then displays video of that event in the lower left corner of your field of vision. If you say, remember dancing the conga at that wedding, Remem will bring up the video. If the person you're talking to says, the last time we were at the beach, Remem will bring up the video. And it's not only for use when speaking with someone else. Remem also monitors your sub-vocalizations. If you read the words, the first Szechuan restaurant I ate at, your vocal cords will move as if you're reading aloud, and Remem will bring up the relevant video. There's no denying the usefulness of software that can actually answer the question, where did I put my keys? But Whetstone is positioning Remem as more than a handy virtual assistant. They want it to take the place of your natural memory. Okay, so we're gonna stop right there. And with the people that you were talking to before, you're going to write some annotations in the margins about these three questions. Number one, what do we know about the narrator? Number two, what do we know about the setting? And remember, consider all of those things about the setting that we talked about when we had that big discussion of pyramid. All those different things contribute to the setting. And then this last one is just talk about it together. What might be the pros and cons of having a perfect memory? Okay. The pros seem like a little bit more, not obvious, but like maybe obvious than the cons do, but also think about what the cons might be of a perfect memory. All right, so you're talking together and then you're writing some answers to these questions in the margins as you find evidence. And the third one you're just talking about. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, the narrative. And you guys don't have a good view. Right. Everyone's initial reaction was alarm, of course. What have we done wrong? Jijingi's father asked Sabe. Europeans had first come to Tifland many years ago. Tifland is in Nigeria, by the way. And while some elders said one day they'd leave and life would return to the ways of the past, until that day arrived, it was necessary for the Tiv to get along with them. This has meant many changes in the way the Tiv did things, but it had never meant Europeans living among them before. The usual reason for Europeans to come to the village was to collect taxes for the roads they had built. They visited some clans more often because the people refused to pay taxes, but that hadn't happened in the Shangev clan. Sabe and the other clan leaders had agreed that paying the taxes was the best strategy. Sabe told everyone not to worry. This European is a missionary. That means all he does is pray. He has no authority to punish us, but our making him welcome will please the men in the administration. He ordered 2 huts built for the missionary, a sleeping hut and a reception hut. Over the course of the next several days, everyone took time off from harvesting the guinea corn to help lay bricks, sink posts into the ground, weave grass into thatch for the roof. It was during the final step, pounding the floor, that the missionary arrived. His porters appeared first, the boxes they carried visible from a distance as they threaded their way between the cassava fields. The missionary himself was the last to appear, apparently exhausted, even though he carried nothing. His name was Mosby, and he thanked everyone who had worked on the huts. He tried to help, but it quickly became clear that he didn't know how to do anything. So eventually he just sat in the shade of a locust bean tree and wiped his head with a piece of cloth. Jijingi watched the missionary with curiosity. The man opened up one of his boxes and took out what at first looked like a block of wood, but then he split it open and Jijingi realized it was tightly bound sheafs of papers. Jijingi had seen paper before. When the Europeans collected taxes, they gave paper in return so that the village had proof of what they'd paid. But the paper that the missionary was looking at was obviously of a different sort and must have had some other purpose. The man noticed Jijingi looking at him and invited him to come closer. My name is Mosby, he said. What's your name? I am Jijingi. My father is Orga of the Shangev clan. Mosby spread open the sheaf of paper and gestured toward it. Have you heard the story of Adam? He asked. Adam was the first man. We are all children of Adam. Here we are descendants of Shangev, said Jijingi, and everyone in Tivland is a descendant of Tiv. Yes, but your ancestor Tiv was descended from Adam, just as my ancestors were. We are all brothers, do you understand? The missionary spoke as if his tongue were too large for his mouth, but Jijingi could tell what he was saying. Yes, I understand. Mosby smiled and pointed to the paper. This paper tells the story of Adam. How can paper tell a story? It is an art that we Europeans know. When a man speaks, we make marks on the paper. When another man looks at the paper later, he sees the marks and knows what sounds the first man made. In that way, the second man can hear what the first man said. Jijingi remembered something his father had told him about old Begba, who was the most skilled in bushcraft. Where you or I would see nothing but some disturbed grass, he can see that a leopard had killed a cane rat at the spot and carried it off, his father said. Begba was able to look at the ground and know what had happened, even though he had not been present. This art of the Europeans must be similar. Those who were skilled in interpreting the marks could hear a story, even if they hadn't been there when it was told. Tell me the story that the paper tells, he said. Mosby told him a story about Adam and his wife being tricked by a snake. Then he asked Jijingi, how do you like it? You're a poor storyteller, but the story was interesting enough. Mosby laughed. You're right, I'm not good at the Tiv language, but this is a good story. It's the oldest story we have. It was first told long before your ancestor Tiv was born. Jijingi was dubious. That paper can't be so old. No, this paper is not, but the marks on it were copied from older paper, and those marks were copied from older paper, and so forth many times. That would be impressive if true. Jijingi liked stories, and older stories were often the best. How many stories do you have there? Very many. Mosby flipped through the sheaf of papers, and Jijingi could see each sheet was covered with marks from edge to edge. There must be many, many stories there. This art you spoke of, interpreting marks on paper, is it only for Europeans? No, I can teach it to you. Would you like that? Cautiously, Jijingi nodded. Okay, so totally different setting. This story is going to go back and forth between the two settings. So one setting is sort of in the near future, when Google has invaded our brains and kind of taken over, right, and planted things. And then this other story is a story of colonization from far, far in the past. So what I want you to do in the last 2 or 3 minutes of class is talk with the people next to you and make some margin notes about common topics that these two stories are talking about. What is the connecting thread between these two plot lines?